So I'm sure you guys saw in my last videos how I talked so much about my love for pediatrics and how that was a specialty that I wanted to pursue for the rest of my life. And don't get me wrong, I still really enjoy pediatrics. But you might be surprised to hear that if you're watching this video right now, then I have officially submitted my application for GP specialty training. And in the last 4 months of being on this path of entrepreneurship and taking a break from medicine, my mind has changed so many times. And this is going to be a 4 months on little life update video where I talk to you guys about my reasoning as to why I chose to pursue GP training. And if you're someone who's interested in medicine as a career, or maybe you're just someone who's a little bit lost in life like I have been over the last 4 months, then I hope this video will help you guys out in some way or form. What is going on, guys? My name is Kenji. Welcome back to my channel. Hopefully it's not the first time you're watching one of my videos, but just in case it is, I'm a part-time doctor and entrepreneur working in London. And I want to start off this video by talking about exactly why I'm making this video. And the first reason really is to just help you guys out. I'm sure loads of you guys who watch my channel are people who are interested in medicine. Maybe you're thinking about doing medicine as a career, or maybe you're in a similar stage as me and you're finally at medical school or in your first few years as working as a doctor, and you're on a path where you're a bit uncertain and you're not entirely sure what to do in your life. Or maybe you have nothing to do with medicine at all. Maybe you're in a different field or specialty, but you're in a path where there's a lot of uncertainty and you're not so sure if what you're doing is the right decision or not. So we'll be talking about why I did choose to do GP training and those reasons, but I also will be giving loads of little anecdotal stories and sort of life advice in regards to how to choose a life that you want. The second reason I'm making this video is really as a reflection. So I love making these sit down videos, if I'm honest with you guys, just to reflect on my life and how things are going. And finally, as a commitment to myself, sitting down right now to make this YouTube video is kind of making the decision to pursue GP training a reality, and it's something that I want to keep you guys updated on as well. But let's go ahead and talk about the first reason as to why I decided to not pursue my other interests like pediatrics or dermatology and stuff like that, and why I in particular chose to do GP training. And the biggest reason really is, honestly speaking, guys, is that I have found it so hard to predict what the next 7 years will be like. Because you see, when I was in my first year of medical school, I knew where I'd be in 3 or 4 years. I knew that I'd be in final year. When I got to final year of medical school, I then knew where I'd be for the next 2 years in my foundation training as a doctor in my first and second year. When I got into my first year of working as a doctor, I knew that I wanted to take a year out, which is right now. So I really have always been on this constant treadmill, but I was on a treadmill where I knew for 100% fact with full certainty that where I'm headed for in the next 2 or 3 years is exactly where I wanted to be. So when I sat down over the last few months and I thought to myself, firstly, whether or not I want to pursue medicine, but secondly, what sort of specialty I want to pursue, it was a really difficult decision. And I found myself feeling like how I felt when I was back in my last few years of secondary school or in high school, where I was thinking about what I wanted to study in university and what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It was a very similar feeling to that, because choosing what specialty I'm going to be in is literally choosing what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it has so many things tied into that. The other things that tied into my decision are, do I want to spend my time working in hospital or a GP practice? Do I want to work normal hours, so 9 to 5, or do I want to work on call hours? How much stress do I want to take on? Certain specialties have higher amounts of stress compared to others. What salary do I want in my future? What sort of future job opportunities do I want to open for myself? Do I want to work in the UK or abroad? There were so many different questions that made making this decision super difficult. And that's why when I sat down to actually think about all these things, the future became more and more unclear, and the harder it became to predict what life will be like over the next couple of years. Because the thing is, guys, like when I sit down here, like right now, I can predict how I will feel, more or less in the next 2 or 3 years. Like the Kenji 3 years from now is probably going to be quite similar to the Kenji I am today. And the Kenji who I was 2 years ago or 3 years ago when I started my foundation training as a doctor is very similar to who I am today. However, the person I was 7 years ago from now, when I was in my early 20s, when I was 21 years old, is so different to who I am being in my late 20s as a 28-year-old. So based off of that idea and based off that feeling, I found it so hard to just sit down and commit to a specialty for the next 7 years. And it's not really just 7 years of pediatric training, for example. If you want to be a good pediatrician, you also have to commit to a further 3 years of working as a consultant or attending if you're in America when you finally finish your actual training. And what I found really incredibly scary is, what if 5 years from now I decided, you know what, I don't really want to do on-call shifts anymore and I don't want to do night shifts? What if I decide that, I don't actually want to live in the UK anymore? These are two very possible outcomes that honestly could pop up in my mind 2 or 3 years or 5 years from now. And once I'm 5 years deep into a specialty training, I would find it very, very difficult to go back or just to give up. So that really is probably the number one reason that I decided to go for GP training, because GP training, like I'll talk about later on, is much shorter compared to any particular specialty training like pediatrics. The second reason why I'm pursuing GP training is because I found it really hard to choose and narrow down on just one specialty. Before I actually started working as a doctor, I don't know if I've actually touched this on my channel before or not, but I actually wanted to do dermatology. And even now, there's still a huge part of me that really enjoys dermatology as a specialty. And then I went into my foundation training and I found a new love for pediatrics. I really enjoyed pediatrics, and as you guys know, I'm still working in pediatrics right now by my choice. I also really enjoyed obstetrics and gynecology as well as psychiatry. So I had these, 4 or 5 different specialties, and during my final year of medical school as well, one of my favorite rotations that I did in all of medical school was actually GP as well. So I had 4 or 5 specialties in my mind that I really enjoyed, not necessarily equally, but all 4 of them were things that I really found myself enjoying and having fun in. So when it came to narrowing down on one particular specialty, I kind of felt bad in a way. I found that if I chose, let's say, obs and gynae, I'd be giving up my love for pediatrics or for psychiatry or GP and for all these other specialties that I found I had interest in. And what I really found fantastic about working in a GP when I was in my final year of medical school during that rotation is that you don't necessarily have to narrow down on these specialties. You can still work with children, you can work with pregnant women, you'll be working in cardiology, in gastroenterology, in neurology, all of these different specialties. And that really is such an amazing thing to think about this doctor who is so generalized and who has such a good knowledge on all of these various specialties. And of course, working as a pediatrician or in these other specialties as well, you do have this crossover. So for example, in pediatrics, you do have to know about cardiology, of course, and gastroenterology and all these other specialties. However, it would be in the context of a child, in children, which is still quite different to how it will be in general practice when you're really treating a patient holistically, not in terms of just medicine, but also psychologically and in all these other aspects as well. So now in a way, I wouldn't have to be giving up all these other specialties. And while I'm actually studying for the entrance exams to get into GP training, I'm really enjoying getting back into general medicine and relearning all the things I forgot in medical school to do with all the other specialties in the human body. And based off of this idea of really enjoying different specialties, the third reason why I chose GP training is that if you do find a specialty in particular that you really enjoy, you can actually become a GP with specialist interests in that area. So at any point in your career, you can actually do further exams to gain further knowledge and skills in that particular area. So as you guys know, over the last 4 months, I've just been doing pediatrics, and in these 4 months, I've honestly really been able to grow my skills so much working with children in pediatrics. And if I carry on working pediatrics, I might actually be able to work my way up to working as a registrar in my hospital one day as well, which is absolutely fantastic. And my current plan is, once I actually finish revising for this GP exam or the MSRA, I actually want to do all of the different pediatric exams, as well as different courses like advanced pediatric life support, as well as other clinical skills, in order to continue progressing my knowledge in pediatrics so that I can always work there, in order to continue progressing my knowledge and skills in pediatrics, so that one day when I work as a GP, I can have specialist interests in pediatrics, and also in my spare time, I can continue to work as a senior house officer in pediatrics, or hopefully one day as a registrar as well. And what I would also really love is, once I actually get these qualifications in pediatrics, I would love to do the same thing in psychiatry, get some more exams out of the way for that so I can become a specialist in that area as well, or a GP with specialist interests, as well as obstetrics and gynecology and dermatology. So my training and my learning in general practice won't just stop in a couple of years when I finish my qualification and training as a GP. I'll continue to pursue these other areas, hopefully God willing, in these other specialties that I've really enjoyed along the way. Now, you guys probably know that the number one thing that I really did not enjoy and probably found the most difficult aspect about working as a doctor is the difficult and notoriously terrible rota that you just get given when you start working in a hospital. Obviously, it wasn't for every single specialty, but most specialties had a rota that I found really difficult to manage with the rest of my life. And over the last 4 months of working part-time as a doctor, I have had the best journey and the best time working as a doctor, and that's honestly coming from the bottom of my heart. Not having to be bound by a rota that is predestined for me and just given to me without, any regard of the other important things that I have going on in the rest of my life. And not having to beg a rota manager to just give me one day off to attend an important event in my life has been absolutely amazing. And this honestly in the last 4 months has been the best time working as a doctor so far in the last 2.5 years. And I won't go on a rant here to talk about that difficulty. On my last videos, you guys have seen where I really talked about the struggles that I had found with living with a rota that is very, very difficult. And imagining myself doing this for another 7 years, having another very difficult rota, working nights, weekends, many 12.5-hour shifts in a row, all of these things with this difficult rota just made it such a difficult pill to swallow. And that's probably the thing that I would find most difficult if I actually submitted my application for specialty training. And the way GP training works is that depending on the area that you actually apply to, most areas actually only have 1 year of hospital medicine where you rotate through different specialties like obs and gynae, pediatrics, etc. But then the final 2 years of your training is in a GP practice where you'll have a normal life. You'll work 9 to 5, no weekends, no on-calls, and actually have a good work-life balance like most of the other people on this earth. So yes, I will have to stick it out for another few months or a year working in a hospital again with a difficult rota, but once I'm through that part, hopefully life will be good and I'll be able to balance the rest of my life as well when I actually get to a GP and work a nice balanced 9 to 5. So the main point that I really wanted to touch on here, guys, and I guess the bit of life advice for you is if you're thinking about a future, no matter whether it's in medicine or not, in my opinion, it shouldn't just be based purely off of what you're passionate about. If I based my training purely based on what I find passion in, it probably, if I'm very honest with you, wouldn't be GP. GP is just something that came together in all aspects. If I look at holistically or as a whole, I want to do GP training for this reason. But in terms of what I'm purely passionate about, there's so many other things that you have to think about in your life before you actually commit to something, in my personal opinion. And this is something I've really come across and learned over the last 2 years. When I look at my senior colleagues, my registrars, my consultants, I can see that when I look in their eyes, there is a passion that is still there. There is a light that maybe, was there very bright initially, but a light in their eyes that is slowly diminished over time. And I know they're passionate about it. I can see that at certain times they're super passionate about their career and their specialty. But unfortunately, because of other aspects outside of the idea of passion, unfortunately, these other things has sort of worn away this person in a way that makes them not feel particularly passionate about the specialty anymore. For example, like I said, guys, working difficult rotas, having super stressful work periods, getting loads of complaints from patients, like in obs and gynae, for example, where getting a complaint is very, very common in certain areas. These other things that they may not necessarily have taken too seriously when they were in their early 20s or in their mid 20s like me is something that may have affected how their life is when they're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s as well. And this really is a situation, guys, I'm honestly trying to avoid. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just focusing on what I'm passionate about. I wanted to make sure that I was building a typical day, like a normal Wednesday afternoon that I would be happy living in and happy working in. And I was trying to imagine what I would be okay for my life to be like day to day. So that's the main takeaway from this point. Don't just think about what you're passionate about, also think about what you're signing up to in regards to the other things that I spoke about. And that moves us nicely on to the next reason why I decided to do GP training, is that it allowed me to work on the other projects that I really am passionate about in my life. As you guys know, I'm really passionate about going to the gym and sports and working out. I really love working in business. I make these YouTube videos for you guys just because I really enjoy it. It's also business, but I genuinely really enjoy making these videos for you guys. And I also really enjoy medicine. But the thing is that medicine, it's not my entire life. It's a big part of my life, but it really is not my entire life. So when I look at my life as a pie chart, for example, medicine does take up a good part of that pie chart, but it doesn't take up the whole entire pie chart. I still have these other areas of my life, which I really love and really need in order to find fulfillment and happiness. But the thing is, guys, when you're in certain types of specialties, you have to understand that balance is very, very different. So for example, if you want to go into surgical training, for example, I have, 2 friends or a couple of friends who are pursuing surgical training or who are already in surgical training. If that's something that you want to do, then that pie chart or that balance will look slightly different depending on the situation you're in. So core training in particular is something that is very demanding, it is very stressful, and to get in requires a big amount of sacrifice. And even when you actually get into training, or when you complete your training, you're finally a neurosurgeon or a ENT specialist, whatever it might be, Even still, guys, that pie chart looks very different. Unfortunately, not just in surgical training, in pediatric training as well, it wasn't really a balance that I thought that I would be particularly happy with. And it has taken me a huge amount of time to discover this about myself and to truly accept it and admit it. In order for me to truly be happy, I personally can't spend all of my week working in medicine. I can't do 60, 70 hours a week just doing medicine in order to truly be happy. In order to be truly fulfilled, I need to have a balance. I need to, work out a few times a week and play different sports. I need to make YouTube videos. I need to do all of these other aspects of my life as well as do medicine in order to be that person that I want to be. And to be completely honest with you guys, over the last few months of making this decision, there has been points in my life where I felt almost guilty, a bit guilty, like, why am I not continuing to be on this treadmill? Why am I not being competitive? I am a competitive person in some aspects. So why am I not competing for these, really hard to fill specialties, these very competitive specialties? I have friends who are applying for surgical training and all these other competitive, specialties. And I really was wondering, like, why am I not doing that? And I felt like I almost had to do that, and I felt guilty for choosing something that wasn't necessarily the most competitive area. But I had to just realize it and be very honest with myself that if I chose pediatrics or any other specialty, I would find it really difficult to have a life outside of that. And it's not just because of the difficult hours, it's not just because of the the difficult rotas that you have working in hospital. It's also because of the weight that you take off of your patients. It's how you are when you come home, especially when you see sad things. Like in the last week, I've seen a child die, a child who was, in my arms, in my hands, who I was trying to help, and I saw them pass away. And that week, last week actually, was a really difficult week for me, not just at work, but coming home to my family was difficult. I felt like almost guilty in a way that I get to be happy when I've just seen something so terrible happen at work. I remember actually reading a book by Henry Marsh, I think it was called Do No Harm, before I applied to medical school. And that book talked about how, so it was a neurosurgeon, if you haven't read it yourself, but it was a neurosurgeon who talks about how every doctor or every surgeon has a graveyard in the back of their hearts, in the back of their mind, where they sort of go to grieve for every patient that they saw pass away or go through a difficult time. And that is, it's honestly very, very true. So the point here that I want to give to you guys that I hope you take away is that when you're thinking about what you're passionate about and what you want to do for the rest of your life, think about this pie chart that I described. What other interests do you have? What makes you feel alive? Is it just your career, or do you have other aspects that you need in order to be balanced, in order to be happy? And if it's mainly medicine, if you get that buzz mostly for medicine, that is completely fine. There is nothing wrong with that. That probably was me once upon a time when I was in medical school particularly. If that is you, that is completely fine. Or is there maybe other aspects of your life that you need in order to maintain your happiness and how you feel and your fulfillment? That is super important. And then what I want you to do is to take this pie chart and see if it matches what you're seeing in reality. Speak to your colleagues or your seniors who are actually living in that specialty and working in that specialty every day. See if their pie chart matches your pie chart. If you're really interested in health and fitness, do they look healthy and fit? Do they describe themselves as having a healthy balance? All of these different things, look at the two. Compare your pie charts, compare their pie charts and the pie chart of what the career demands. And if it does not meet that balance, then my advice would be to think about your decision very, very carefully. And that's again why I chose GP, because I looked at the GP pie chart. I looked at my friends who were working in GP. I spoke to them about it. And that was the pie chart that looked mostly similar to what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that really is one of the most important things. Okay, so this video has been very, very long. So the last few points I just want to briefly touch on. And the next one being that if I chose GP training, it would actually reduce my time that it would take for me to finish my training. And let me explain. As you guys know, in this gap year that I'm in right now, I also have still been working part-time in pediatrics and growing my skills and continuing to have a portfolio about all the things that I've learned and all the things that I've done whilst in the specialty. So if you're in a similar situation as me, where you have maybe some training elsewhere, maybe you did a bit of locuming, maybe you were doing pediatric training before and you're switching to GP training, in those circumstances, you can actually apply to have up to 1 year taken away from your GP training in order to shorten your training. So rather than being 3 years, it might only be 2 years. And I've actually applied in my GP application to try and shorten my training by about 6 months or 4 to 6 months because of all of this pediatric training that I have. Hopefully, I will get to miss pediatrics or miss that pediatric rotation in my GP training so that it would literally take me only 2.5 years in order to completely reach the end of my training as a doctor and finally be, right at the top as a consultant or a fully qualified GP. So that's the next reason. The other thing that I had in my mind as well when thinking about GP training was how easy it is to move to other countries. Now, I'm not saying that I want to move to another country straight away, but as you guys know, I've always said that the door is open, and I think it's really important to have the door open, to live the best life that you possibly can. If there is another place that is giving you what you want and is able to help you look after your family better, I'm all for that. And I've been in the UK for the last 15 to 16 years. I've been here for a very long time, and it really definitely feels like it has been a long time. So when I've looked into how easy it is to actually move to a different country, when I've spoken to friends who have done the same thing or in my research as well, I found that the two easiest ways of moving there in terms of specialties is one, general practice or family medicine, and the second is emergency medicine, especially if you're a GP with specialist interest. If you're working in these two specialties, in my experience, then moving to somewhere like Australia, Canada, America, the Middle East can actually be a lot easier, at least in my own research and experience. And the last amazing thing about GP training is your flexibility of your work. Now, as a GP, you can actually work from home in some circumstances. I know some people who do that. You can work in telemedicine, so you're literally working from an app where you see patients, over the phone or over, some sort of FaceTime thing. Again, I know a few doctors who do that. You can work privately. There are so many job opportunities for flexible work. And if you're applying to work as a GP in a GP surgery, how it actually works is you apply for a certain number of sessions. Now, one session is actually half a day. So if you were to work, let's say, a full day, you'd be choosing to work 2 sessions a week. Or you can work, let's say, for example, 6 sessions a week, which would be 3 days a week. And if you work 3 days a week, you can then spend the rest of your time doing whatever the hell you want to do. And in those days where you're actually working in a GP, a lot of your time is spent looking after patients, working one-to-one with patients clinically. And that's the aspect of medicine that I really enjoy. What I've seen is that consultants in other specialties spend a lot of their time, I'd say probably the majority of the time is not spent seeing patients. It's spent doing admin work. It's spent doing quality improvement projects, all of these different research projects, clinical governance. A lot of your time is actually spent doing all of this sort of managerial things. And the more senior you actually become as a consultant, the less time you actually spend with your patients. So guys, when I look ahead in my next 2 or 3 years of my life, I absolutely love the idea of maybe working as a GP, seeing patients 2 days a week, 1 day a week, 3 days a week maybe, and spending the rest of my time doing the other things that I love in my life, which is hopefully still making YouTube videos for you guys, working out and all these other aspects that make Kenji who Kenji is. I want to finish this very long video by just very briefly talking about what I've learned in all of this time and my reflections just generally over the course of the last 2 years, making this very big and difficult decision. And the first one really is that no matter what you choose, guys, at the end of the day, I'm not saying this in a negative way, but at the end of the day, you will feel like you missed out. You will feel like you made a bad choice, and that is completely okay. There's been many times where I felt like, oh God, have I messed up? Was I supposed to be a pediatric consultant? Was I supposed to be a dermatologist? And the answer is probably yes. There probably is a Kenji out there in a parallel universe that would have been a fantastic pediatrician or a dermatologist or whatever the hell that is. But the thing is, guys, I can't live in these multiple universes. I have to choose one universe, and I have one life that I must choose for myself. And I'm okay. And you kind of have to come to terms with the fact that no matter what you choose, you will feel like you made a wrong decision or a bad decision. But there really is no right or wrong decision. There is only various degrees of wrongness. So maybe if I went into gastroenterology, that would be super wrong for me. Yes, I'll still be working as a doctor, but the majority of that decision would probably be quite wrong. And in GP training, there will be things still, guys, that I don't enjoy or that I find annoying, and there will be certain degrees of wrongness that I will have in GP practice, and that is okay. It's okay because there is no right or wrong decision. There's only a decision that you can make that you feel most peace at and most comfortable with. The third thing I've learned is that if you're going to do something, do it with your entire heart, and if it doesn't work out in the end, then that's okay, but at least you know that you gave it your 100%. The reason why 1 year ago, guys, I decided to take a year out from medicine is because I was just super confused. I was not at the stage where I am now, basically, where I'm happy to make a final call and to make a solid decision. I feel like a year ago, if I made a decision, it probably would have been a bad decision, and I didn't want to pursue a specialty unless I felt 100% peace in my heart and unless I knew for certain that this is what I'm going to be committing to. So if you're going to do something, do it completely. But also, guys, at the same time, is after a certain period of time, it is better to make a wrong decision than to make no decision at all. Because at the end of the day, if I change my mind about this, and by the way, don't hit me in the comments, guys, a year from now. If I change my mind and I decide to do something completely different, then I'm allowed to do that. That is completely in my down to my discretion. But if I decide that I made a wrong decision, then at least, guys, I would have learned something in the process. At least I would know that I tried my best, I thought it was right for me, and I've learned that it's not. I've gone through the application, I've done certain exams, I've done further training, and I've just decided it's not for me. And it's completely okay. I remember when I was in secondary school, when I decided to do biomedical science and then go on to do medicine, when I was there and I didn't get the grades to do medicine, I remember my biology teacher telling me that if I decide to do biomedical science, I will never be a doctor. It is too expensive, it's too competitive, it gets even more competitive, and just don't do it. Like, it is a dumb decision. I had my careers advisors telling me that, again, it's very unlikely. If you go into biomedical science, again, the competition gets harder and the chances of you becoming a doctor are slightly, well, very, very slim, basically. And you know what I said to them? I said in my head, like, F all of these things that people are telling me. I'm not going to listen to anyone else. I'm going to do what feels right in my heart. I'm going to do biomedical science and see where life takes me. And I'm going to apply to medicine and hopefully get in. And that's what I did, guys. And I'm here a couple of years later, sitting as a doctor in front of you. So I made a decision, you know, I committed to myself. I decided I'm going to do biomedical science and see where life takes me. And that is completely okay. The final thing that I want to take away from this, guys, the final reflection that I have, is to not take yourself too seriously and to not take your future plans too seriously. You will change over the course of your life. If you're in medical school right now and you're super keen to be a rheumatologist, I promise you somewhere along the line, you will change your mind, not necessarily on the specialty, but in other aspects of your life. You will have your priorities change. You know, as I've grown older, I sound like an old man now, I'm really not. But as I've aged, I've really realized that my priorities are changing every day, month to month. I'm learning new things about myself. I'm learning what I value, what I don't value as much, and I'm growing as a person, and that is completely okay. So now when I make a decision, like to pursue GP training, I don't take it too seriously. Of course, I'm doing it with my entire heart. I'm doing it with 100% of my effort. But I'm putting out there that if I decide that I changed my mind and I decide that I made the wrong decision, that is completely fine, and I'm honestly okay with that. And that pretty much is the end of this very long video, guys. I genuinely hope that you have taken something away from this. Maybe I've convinced you to do general practice or not, but I hope there has been a bit of life advice that you've been able to take away and can apply to your own life as well. If you made this far in the video, please leave a sun emoji. I would love to know who made this far, but also leave a comment about what is your dream specialty? What is the one specialty that you wish you could pursue in your life? I read every single comment and I reply to every single comment, so I'd love to know. Before you leave, please make sure you're subscribed as well with notifications on to never miss another upload. Leave a like, and here is another video on my channel that you guys might actually enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you for being a part of the journey. I really appreciate you guys so much.